Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm going to be test driving the 2016 Nissan Maxima, and this particular trim that I'm in is the SR, which is basically the sport version. It has a sport tune suspension, and this is going to be a little bit different than what I usually do because I'm actually at an event with Nissan rather than this sitting in my driveway for me to have it for a week and test out. So I'm going to go on a short little driving loop, see how this thing feels. There's a lot of cool features about it, and some of the engineering I'll get into also, but basically we're just going to see how this thing drives. So let's go ahead and get out here. Now, one of the first things I noticed actually sitting in the vehicle, your front windshield is actually fairly narrow, as is the rear windshield. And overall, I'd say visibility is fine, especially looking out the sides, checking your blind spot, very easy to do. But the front windshield is a bit narrow, which is just something worth noting. So I'm going to put this in sport mode. Why not? It's there, right? And this is the sport version, so it has 19-inch diamond cut wheels, sport tune suspension, as I mentioned. And one of the things that's actually fairly surprising, so this has 300 horsepower, and it doesn't weigh all that much. Depending on the trim level, it's somewhere up between, I believe, about 3,500 to about 3,600, which actually, believe it or not, gives it a better power to weight ratio in the lowest trim form than the Audi S4, which I tested. So, you know, a decent amount of power in this, and not all that heavy for what it is. Actually pretty good weight-wise. You know, it's got basically the same amount of horsepower as my Subaru STI, and yet it only weighs about 100, a little bit over 100 pounds more, depending on the trim level. So ride quality so far, very soft, very comfortable, definitely quiet. So interior wise, you know, it definitely feels pretty nice. I really like this steering wheel. It's got a good amount of cushion to it. It's got some leather, some Alcantara on it. Overall, you know, and it's got plenty of controls on it as well. You've got a nice screen up front. And all of the Maximas come standard with navigation. So one of the cool things they did is they went away with options, and you just buy a grade. So there's 5 grades of Maximas, and you just choose the one that you want. No need to customize. And basically the reason they're doing this is you're kind of eliminating this need for online shopping, where everybody wants, you know, something perfectly customizable, and you can never find it at the dealership. So because you just buy a grade, then you will be able to find the grade you want at a dealership, and you won't have to, you know, purchase and wait for the order to come in online. So steering has actually a pretty decent weight to it, and that may be because of the sport mode as well. You know, it adds a little bit of weight. This does have a CVT transmission, and so, you know, depending on how you use it, it works differently. So if you're at lighter depressing of the throttle pedal, then it's going to act more like a traditional CVT, where it'll just maintain a certain RPM. If you put your foot down, it'll kind of be stepped, so it acts more like a regular automatic transmission, where you actually have gear shifts, where it changes between set ratios. Now, I can't speak much for the brake pedal yet, but the throttle pedal feels fine. You know, decent sensitivity to it, and you get right into it right when you start touching it. It starts to apply throttle. So I'm going to come brake here, and actually a good feel to it. Decent amount of travel actually, and not all that stiff. It actually has a good feel to it, good progressive rate as you press down on it, and it doesn't feel all that sensitive. So, you know, you're not going to have an abrupt stop by accident. It's very easy to modulate, and this is my first time using it, so definitely something easy to adapt to. Okay, so just while I'm sitting here checking out the interior, you've got a nice little knob for using this menu over here, and you've got the ability heated and cooled seats, automatic front windows. You've got some controls over here, heated steering wheel. You can turn off your traction control, pop the trunk. You also do have paddle shifters, so you can have these basically set gear ratios that the CVT uses, which you can choose to use, put it over into the manual mode there. For the most part, I do like this infotainment setup. Everything's pretty simple in here, intuitive to use. It doesn't require, you know, a lot of time spent looking at it to figure out what you want to do. Pretty large buttons with large text. Ooh. Actually does have some power. Wow. Surprisingly quick when you put your foot down. Yeah, good torque. I like that. And CVTs tend to do the manual activation better than traditional automatic gearboxes, and this seems to be the case with this one as well. Downshifts are pretty quick. Upshifts seem to take a little bit longer to do, but overall, smooth transition, not jolty, and you know, it does happen decently quick, especially on downshift. So overall, I think the manual selection is fine to use, and certainly better than most automatic gearboxes out there. I'm going to put it back into automatic mode now and just let it figure it out. Now, diving into the engineering, there's actually some pretty cool things Nissan has done to improve this Maxima over the previous generation. Starting with the engine, they've worked extensively on the intake system, redesigning the intake valves and ports to promote tumbling of the air to better aid in combustion. They've also shortened the intake runner length by 20 millimeters and increased the diameter by 1 millimeter to improve airflow. The intake valves are also filled with sodium to help conduct heat away from the combustion chamber. Moving on to the transmission, they've reduced the size of the oil pump, made use of a more efficient chain, and are now using a lower viscosity oil. Overall, this made a 40% reduction in the friction within the system, meaning more power to the wheels and better fuel economy. Body rigidity is up 25% thanks to the use of a high tensile strength steel, a strategic rear brace, and a redesigned strut tower brace, contributing to both an 8% improvement in front lateral stiffness and a 2.2 pound weight reduction. Overall, the platform is down 82 pounds in weight, which, as I mentioned previously, aids in its favorable power to weight ratio. Try that acceleration one more time. It's actually really solid, pretty impressive. Front wheel drive, and I don't notice torque steer at 300 horsepower going all the way to the front, and it pulls pretty well, so pretty impressive. You know, it's funny that there is, it looks like a FRS in front of me. This actually has the same fuel economy rating as that FRS, 22 in the city, 30 on the highway, and yet that FRS weighs far less than this does, has a much smaller engine, and makes a lot less horsepower. So it's pretty impressive that something this large is getting as good a fuel economy as that vehicle right there in the EPA ratings. Now, just to clarify though, that's for the manual transmission of the FRS versus this is a CVT. The automatic version of that vehicle does get better fuel economy. So another thing worth mentioning is just that these seats are extremely comfortable. Same story with the Rogue and the Murano that I drove. These zero gravity seats, as they call them, they're just extremely comfortable to sit in. It's probably one of the first things you'll notice if you haven't sat in one of these new Nissan vehicles, is just how comfortable these seats are. In fact, I thought that before I even knew that these were called zero gravity seats. I sat in them and I thought, wow, like these seats are really great. And so I looked up to see like if there was anything specific they did with them, because I thought, man, like Nissan's doing it right. Of all the vehicles I drove up at that event in Washington with the 27 trucks and SUVs, I thought, you know, this Murano feels the best. And same story with this seat just feels fantastic. So thank you for watching, and if you have any...
Exit onto Northeast 145th Street. Then there is a traffic circle. Take the second exit.
Questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. All right, we're at a red light. Squealed the tires a little bit. Sorry, Nissan. Thing's fun, honestly. Like, I think on a back road, this thing would actually be pretty enjoyable to rip around in.